The Siege of Troy is one of the most famous events in ancient history, known primarily through Homer's Iliad and various Greek myths. It marks the culmination of the legendary Trojan War, a conflict between the city of Troy, in modern-day Turkey, and a coalition of Greek states. The story is a mixture of myth, legend, and some historical truths, though the exact events are debated by scholars. Here's a detailed breakdown of the Siege of Troy. The Trojan War ignited due to a divine quarrel. Mythology tells us that Paris, the Trojan prince, was tasked with deciding who among the goddesses Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite was the most beautiful. Each goddess tried to sway him with a bribe. Hera promised power, Athena offered wisdom, and Aphrodite vowed the love of the most beautiful mortal woman, Helen. Paris awarded the title to Aphrodite, who in turn helped him win over Helen, already married to Menelaus, the Spartan king. This act led Menelaus to rally a Greek coalition, spearheaded by his brother Agamemnon, the Mycenaean king, to reclaim Helen. When Troy refused to return Helen, the Greeks embarked on a colossal military expedition against the city, enduring for a decade. The key figures in the Siege of Troy were legendary heroes on both sides. Achilles, the greatest of the Greek warriors, nearly invincible except for his heel. Hector, the mightiest of the Trojan warriors and the Prince of Troy. Agamemnon, king of Mycenae and leader of the Greek forces. Odysseus, king of Ithaca and a master tactician known for his cleverness. Priam, the noble and wise king of Troy. And Paris, the Prince of Troy, whose actions triggered the war. The Siege of Troy was not a conventional battle, but rather a prolonged military blockade. The Greeks besieged the walls of Troy, cutting off trade and supplies in an effort to starve the city into surrender. The Trojans, however, were resilient, and their walls, which were reputed to be nearly impregnable, held strong against the Greek onslaught. During the war, both sides suffered heavy casualties, and many of the famous battles in the Iliad revolve around individual combat between the great warriors. The duel between Hector and Achilles is perhaps the most iconic, with Hector being slain by Achilles outside the gates of Troy in revenge for the death of Achilles' friend, Patroclus. The fall of Troy. The war ultimately ended not through a decisive battle, but through trickery. After 10 years of fruitless fighting, the Greeks, led by Odysseus, devised a cunning plan. The Trojan Horse. The Greeks built a massive wooden horse, hollowed out to conceal a small group of their finest soldiers inside. They left the horse at the gates of Troy as a gift to the gods, hoping it would grant them a safe return home. The Greeks pretended to sail away, leaving the horse behind and making it appear as if they had given up on their siege. The Trojans' fatal mistake. The Trojans, believing the war was over and the Greeks had left, brought the horse into the city as a symbol of their victory. That night, after the Trojans had fallen asleep, the Greek soldiers hidden inside the horse emerged, opened the gates of Troy, and signaled the returning Greek army, who had secretly sailed back under cover of darkness. The sacking of Troy. With the gates open, the Greek army poured into the city, and Troy was sacked. The Trojans, caught off guard and devastated, were unable to defend themselves. According to myth, the city was destroyed, and many of its inhabitants were killed. King Priam was murdered by Achilles' son Neoptolemus, and the royal family was either killed or taken into slavery. Aftermath. After the fall of Troy, the Greeks returned home, but their journey was far from simple. Odysseus faced a long and perilous journey back to Ithaca, which is the subject of Homer's Odyssey. Other Greek leaders, like Agamemnon, faced tragic fates upon returning home. Agamemnon was murdered by his wife, Clytemnestra, for sacrificing their daughter, Iphigenia, before the war. The Trojans were scattered, and the survivors of Troy, including Aeneas, a Trojan hero, fled and eventually founded what would become Rome, according to Roman mythology. Historical context and debate. While the Trojan War is considered a myth, there is evidence that a city known as Troy did exist and was likely destroyed at some point in the late Bronze Age, around the 12th century BCE. Archaeological excavations at Hisarlik in modern-day Turkey have uncovered the ruins of an ancient city, which many believe to be the site of Troy. The city's destruction layer suggests it was violently destroyed, which aligns with the legendary accounts of the siege. However, whether the events of the war occurred as described in the myths is uncertain. Key themes in the myth: honor and revenge. Much of the Trojan War narrative revolves around personal honor, revenge, and the pursuit of glory, especially through heroic deeds and military victories. The will of the gods. The gods play an essential role in influencing the events of the war, often helping or hindering mortals based on their personal agendas and rivalries. Fate and tragedy. Many of the heroes are bound by fate, and their lives end tragically, whether it's Achilles' death or Hector's fall in battle. Conclusion. The Siege of Troy remains one of the most iconic and enduring stories from ancient mythology. Whether as a symbol of human conflict, honor, and tragedy, or as a reflection of ancient societal values, the story of Troy continues to captivate audiences worldwide. The Trojan Horse, in particular, has become a symbol of clever deception and strategy, illustrating how intelligence can sometimes overcome brute force.